Something called you here, to this moment, to these words. Not chance, not algorithm, not coincidence. Something deeper. The same force that pulls tides and turns seasons has been orchestrating the circumstances that led you to pause, to listen, to finally hear what's been trying to reach you through the noise of your perfectly ordered life. You've been doing everything right, haven't you? Following the blueprint, checking the boxes, meeting the expectations. You wake up at the same time, follow the same routines, fulfill the same responsibilities. And yet, somewhere in the quiet spaces between your accomplishments, there's been this growing whisper, soft at first, then persistent, asking, "But who are you in all of this?" The dangerous comfort of rightness has become your cage. You've built a life so structured, so responsible, so admirable from the outside, that you've forgotten to ask if it fits the shape of your soul. Day after day, you've worn the costume of who you're supposed to be, until you can barely remember what you look like underneath it all. They tell you this feeling means you're ungrateful, selfish, going through a phase. They see your life, the stability, the success, the apparent contentment, and they can't understand why you'd question something so good. But goodness that suffocates isn't goodness at all. It's a slow forgetting of who you came here to be. The repetition wasn't malicious, it was survival, adaptation, the natural human response to finding what works and holding tight. But somewhere between learning the rules and following them perfectly, you stopped asking if they were your rules. You became so good at being what was needed that you forgot to be what was true. Every morning you've woken up feeling slightly more distant from yourself was preparing you for this recognition. Every time you caught your reflection and felt like you were looking at a stranger. Every moment you felt like you were watching your life from the outside. Those weren't signs of failure. They were breadcrumbs leading you back to yourself. You have permission to outgrow the life you've built. You have permission to question the choices that once made sense, but no longer serve the person you're becoming. You don't need anyone's approval to reclaim the parts of yourself you've set aside in service of being acceptable, manageable, predictable. But here's what haunts the space between recognition and action: the fear that if you change, you'll lose everything you've worked to build. The terror that if you stop being who everyone expects you to be, you'll discover there's nothing authentic left underneath. What if, after all this time, you've forgotten how to be genuinely you? There's a particular kind of grief that comes with realizing you've been living someone else's idea of your life. It's the mourning of years spent in beautiful prisons, of dreams deferred so long they feel like childhood fantasies, of a self so buried under layers of should that you wonder if it still exists at all. This moment isn't an accident. Today, right now, as these words find their way to your consciousness, the universe is staging an intervention, not with drama or crisis, but with this quiet confrontation between the life you've been living and the life that's been waiting for you to remember it. You've been stronger than you know, carrying the weight of everyone else's expectations while your own dreams grew thin from neglect. It takes extraordinary resilience to function so well while feeling so disconnected from yourself. That strength you've been using to maintain what no longer fits, that same strength can rebuild what does. The voice of your conditioning sounds so reasonable, so practical, so concerned for your well-being. It whispers about security, stability, what people will think. But underneath that voice, can you hear it? There's another one, quieter but truer. It's been trying to reach you through feelings you couldn't name, through restlessness you couldn't explain, through dreams that visit you in the soft hours before dawn. What if the very thing you've been calling your problem is actually your solution? What if this dissatisfaction isn't a character flaw, but a compass pointing toward your authentic north? What if the part of you that refuses to be satisfied with good enough is the part that knows you are meant for something more aligned with who you actually are? The people in your life who truly see you have been waiting for this awakening. They've watched you shrink yourself to fit spaces that were never designed for your fullness. They've seen the light in your eyes dim as you've learned to want smaller, dream safer, be less. They're ready to meet the person you were before the world convinced you to be someone else. You don't have to burn down your entire life to find yourself again. Sometimes revolution looks like small, daily choices to honor what feels true over what feels expected. Sometimes awakening is as simple as asking yourself in each moment, what would I choose if I weren't afraid of disappointing anyone? The cost of staying asleep is measured in moments of aliveness missed, in parts of yourself that atrophy from disuse, in the slow erosion of your capacity to recognize your own desires. Every day you postpone this conversation with your authentic self, you lose a little more fluency in the language of your own heart. But here's what they don't tell you about wake-up calls. They don't come with instruction manuals or guaranteed outcomes. They come with an invitation to remember who you were before you learned to be who you thought you had to be. They come with permission to want what you want, to need what you need, to be who you are. This feeling you've been carrying, this sense that something essential is missing from your perfectly acceptable life. It's not a symptom of mental illness or ingratitude. It's the most sane response possible to a life that's been lived in service of everyone's comfort but your own. You've been sleepwalking through a life that looks good on paper but feels empty in your bones. You've been so busy being who you thought you should be that you forgot to ask who you wanted to become. But forgetting isn't permanent. What was lost can be found. What was buried can be unearthed. The moment of awakening isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's as quiet as this, a recognition that spreads through your consciousness like ink through water, staining everything you thought you knew about yourself and your choices. Sometimes it's just the simple acknowledgement, I have been living someone else's life. You stand at the threshold between the person you've been and the person you're becoming. Behind you lies the familiar territory of roles you've mastered, expectations you've met, a life you've built with care and intention. Ahead lies the unknown landscape of authentic choice, of desires acknowledged, of a self waiting to be reclaimed. The choice isn't between your current life and chaos. It's between sleepwalking and awakening, between existing and living, between being who you think you should be and discovering who you actually are. It's between the safety of the known and the adventure of the true. This is your wake-up call. not from some external force demanding change, but from the deepest part of yourself that has been waiting with infinite patience for you to remember. It's been calling your name in a voice so familiar you almost forgot to hear it, but now you do. Now you remember. The question isn't whether you're ready to wake up. The question is whether you're willing to trust that the person you were before you learned to be anyone else is still there, waiting, still whole, still worthy of the life you came here to live. Wake up, your real life is waiting.